Welcome to Tradecast, being beamed to the world from Belia Trading offices in Lima, Peru. My name is Manolo Delgado. I'm Belia Trading's marketing director, and I prefer mountain over beach holidays. And I always wanted to have a sister, which I never had. But that's not important. If you want to learn a little bit more about me, please go and look me up in LinkedIn. Let me remind you, in case this is the first time you join us, what is Tradecast? Tradecast is a series of interviews with top international executives in all areas related to international trade and business. We will address different subjects, and let me be quick here because I know attention is an expensive commodity these days. Product development, global sourcing, manufacturing, logistics, quality control, free trade zones, international trade law, shipping, free trade agreements, WTO negotiations, entrepreneurship, and many, many more subjects. We have confirmed guests from all over the world, which is something very cool about Tradecast. I'll go from east to west. We're going to talk eventually with executives from Japan, China, Hong Kong, Singapore, Vietnam, Sri Lanka, India, Turkey, Germany, Switzerland, Spain, Denmark, Brazil, the USA, Barbados, Bolivia, Mexico, Colombia, Ecuador, and of course, Peru, where I'm sitting right now. If this is the first time you join us, as I said, let me just remind you about the format, the structure of Tradecast. We will first talk about the person, our guest, and learn about his life and his professional career. Then we will talk about the company that he's working for and learn about their services and some of the stories of this company. Then we'll talk about the present and then the future of the subject matter of the interview. Of course, present and future might get a little mingled because, well, that's the reality of business. And just to finish, before we introduce our first guest, let me do a small disclaimer. The opinions expressed here by our guests are personal and not necessarily reflect the companies. And one thing that I forgot, the last section of the Tradecast will be this very, very cool questionnaire by French journalist Bernard Pivot, called, and please excuse my French, A Pastorov à bouillon de couture. A Pastorov à bouillon de couture by Bernard Pivot, in which we will ask some questions to our guests. And I urge you, I command you, I beg you to please stay until the end because I think you will like this. Just before we start, as always, we share with you one trade fact. In this case is about the US. The US has a trade surplus with 100 countries and a trade deficit with 93. Who are the top 5 trading partners of the US? Canada, Mexico, China, Japan, and Germany. And actually, China has fallen from second to third in the last 2 years. So, finishing the introduction, let me introduce you to our good friend sitting right now in New Jersey. I call him Jakob Bluhme. In his hometown in Denmark, he's called Jakob Bluhme. He's the Chief Commercial Officer at Shipco. Jakob, thank you so much for joining Tradecast.
Thank you very much, Manolo. Thank you very much for having me as a part of it. Very much appreciate it and looking forward to it.
Great. Let's start, Jakob, as I said, with the personal part. Okay, you are an example. I think you are a role model in international business, and a big part of our audience are people that are starting their careers or maybe finishing a master's or looking to get into this type of work and have a successful career in international trade. So let's talk a little bit about you so you can share some experiences. Could you tell us first, where were you born and what did you study?
Sure. I was born in the little city in Denmark called Roskilde, about 60,000 inhabitants today. Denmark is also a fairly small country of 5-6 million people, but that's where I grew up and started my career.
And you studied what, Jakob? You studied something related to trade?
I did not study anything related to trade in the very beginning. So I started business school, business college, if you will, and then the transportation industry that I ended up in. I did go to transportation school during my being an apprentice for 2 years with the company I started with.
which was Shipco. Used to work for another one before Shipco, right?
So Shipco, yeah. So basically, I started with Scan Shipping, which is the parent company of Shipco today. It was now called Scan Group. So I started with Scan Shipping back in 1992, and then went to transportation school, and then later on, the sister company or subsidiary of Scan Shipping, Shipco Transport, I joined later on.
So 1992. So I'm doing a very smart math now. You're celebrating your 30th anniversary with Shipco.
That's correct. Yeah, 1st of November was my 30th anniversary, and 25th of February I turned 50. So this is all about the 30 and 50. Obviously, is a little bit of a coincidence, but I was obviously 20 when I started.
That's amazing. That's amazing. For full disclosure, I was happy enough to be at your 25th celebration in Hong Kong. I'm hoping the 30th one was as good as that one. So you started, working for one of a sister company, the company, then you moved to Shipco officially. I think you went to the US. Can you tell us a bit about your international career? Where did you go first? And now tell us about the last 20 odd years of your international experience.
Sure, absolutely. That's in 1996, after I was done with my apprenticeship in Copenhagen, I went to New Jersey, stayed here for a couple of years. I was doing air freight, so basically transportation by airplanes, and then a couple of years after I came to New Jersey, I actually got an opportunity as a air freight manager in Chicago, here in the US as well. And I was in Chicago until 2008 when I moved to Hong Kong. But during those Chicago years, where I started out as air freight manager, I became the general manager of the entire office in Chicago. So that included both air freight and ocean freight and trucking and everything else that we did. I did that for a couple of years, and that was sort of like my start into ocean freight and LCL, which we will talk about a little bit later on in the interview as well.
And then, so you moved to, when you went to Hong Kong, was as then you jumped to the commercial side, or you left the Hong Kong Asian operations? How did that go? Because you were a long time in Hong Kong.
Correct, yeah. So basically, in 2006, while I was still in Chicago, I actually took on that commercial role. There was a new general manager that came in. I was basically promoted in as the director business development for the USA Asia trade. So I took that on in 2006. Then in 2007 or thereabouts, our management came to me and asked me if I wouldn't make a permanent move to Hong Kong and sort of be there. At any given time when people came visiting and the customers that were there needed to be visited as well, right? And then travel around the region. So I took that commercial role actually while I was in Chicago, and then later was asked if I wanted to move to Hong Kong, which I then did. I spent 10 years in Hong Kong, 2008 until 2018. And basically developed our LCL with our global accounts. So our business model is catering to the freight forwarders, NVOCCs, if you will, the logistics companies. So we visit them around the world where they're at, where their global headquarters are, their regional headquarters are. That was what I was responsible for, to go and develop those relationships and develop LCL in general. So.
And now that you're back in the headquarters in Jersey of Shipco, I understand. Has your role changed or just been expanded from Asia to global?
Right. So my role actually changed in 2017 while I was in Hong Kong, and I took a more global role for the organization. So back in 2017, I became the global CCO for our global account on a global level, if you will, right? So I already expanded my role then, but that was with a promise that within 5 years I would return to the headquarters here in New Jersey, where I'm based today. And it was up to me really when that transition was going to happen, and I transitioned then in 2018 back to take this role.
You only gave it 1 year. Why not the 5? I thought you were enjoying it.
Yeah, and I'm very much. Right. I moved that I very much enjoyed Hong Kong and my Asia experience. No doubt, it's one of my best 10 years, if not the best 10 years I've had in my business career. But my children came to a certain age, so we had to move, and they had to get adjusted to the American way of going to school. The timing was right to go in 2018. Had we gone a couple of years later, it could have been a little bit difficult for them maybe to transition into the American school system.
Sure.
It was the right way to do it.
Something that, yes, expats have to always, one of the most important variables is the family, of course, or where you go and when you do it. Let me ask you a couple of things, Jakob. You're quite unique, especially for the new, let's say, millennial generations or younger, about how long have you stayed in a company? Nowadays, people tend to move quite a bit. So I have two questions regarding that. What was it about Shipco that made you stay, in terms of, what did you love so much about the company that made you decide? Because I'm pretty sure at some point you must have got offers to move around, but you stayed with Shipco. And the other question is, any advice for people that want to grow within the company? What type of, I don't know, characteristics or abilities, or what you should do if you want to stay within a company and scale up the hierarchy to even become a global CEO as you are?
Sure. No, and definitely to cover the first part, 30 years with the organization, and I've not really ever had a reason to make a move. You're right. I mean, of course, you get proposals from companies, you get approached by companies during a period of 30 years where I've been with the organization, but I was very quickly to sort of turn them down. I felt I had to give the company, of course, the loyalty that they've shown to me as well. They've given me many opportunities to sort of switch into different positions, as I also explained here earlier, right? That new opportunities came on. So there's been a difference in my day-to-day doing business within Shipco, right? I've gone from an air freight role into an ocean freight general manager role, and then into a commercial role, which I love very much, right? And then moved around the world in that period as well. So there's not really been any reason why I would ever consider anything else, and certainly it has been a fantastic ride.
So that's a good one. The company gave you opportunities to learn new things. That's a fair statement. Right. Moving within different services kept you curious, kept you growing, stimulated. That's okay. That's great advice for people that have to deal now with a generation that sometimes is looking very much to move and learn all the time. And the other question that I had regarding that, Jakob, is because you've handled teams from all over the world, I'm curious about how would you define your leadership style? It's not the same, of course, to deal only with one culture in the same time zone, face-to-face in the office. No, it's a different challenge for you to have to deal with many cultures in many countries. So I'm sure you have some core values that you apply to everything. Maybe give us some idea of how to also deal with the nuances of a world organization and a worldly team.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, my leadership style for sure is I'm certainly not micromanaging in any way. The way I grew up in the organization and how I have it right now within the organization is nobody's micromanaging me either, and that's worked out well. I mean, people are supposed to be able to work on their own and take responsibility of their own time and make sure that it's invested well. The company is paying good money for people to work within the organization. So I can say I give a lot of string, if you will, or rope that people, they'll do their own thing. Of course, communication is key. I speak to my team very regularly, making sure that they're okay, making sure that not just the business part of it is growing, but also that they're doing okay as individuals. Of course, could that be family time or family life, or is that business life? I mean, if you're not happy on the family side, well then, hey, you're not going to do a good job working either. I think that's certainly proven in many different cases, right? So it's certainly sorry, a little little bit broader management style. You could say by no means micromanaging, and there to assist, I think, is more important for a manager when issues come in and support the team when maybe they're struggling a little bit with certain business aspects. It's important to be there and support them and show that support, and then we move along together. So.
Good. Before we transition into Shipco itself, I'm just curious because give us a sense of your traveling schedule, my friend. How many weeks out of 52 of the year are you out on the road, so to say?
Right. Well, I looked at it. That was just prior to the pandemic, because the pandemic, of course, had put some limits on the traveling. But it's about 200 days a year. So I sort of looked at it in days. So it is quite a few days for sure. I'm on the road, but you could say, hey, as long as you enjoy it, then there's no problem doing it. As long as your family is understanding that this is what the business requires, then hey, I certainly. I'm very happy we're back to traveling more again. I'm not a sit behind your desk kind of person, so.
This is a good way to transition a bit into Shipco. Maybe you can tell us first a little about the story of Shipco. A couple of minutes just to understand the story, and then we can go into a bit more on the services and the geographies where you guys operate. But for somebody who has never heard the word Shipco, please give us a bit of information about the company. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. So as I mentioned in the beginning, Shipco Transport is a subsidiary of what's called Scan Group today, and Shipco's primary business today is what's called LCL, a less container load, that stands for. So Shipco is involved in many different verticals today. So we are having a full container loads. We're having trucking, a domestic division. We're having IT concepts that also our customers are making use of today. All based on logistics, all based on transportation. But the primary business for us today, I forgot to of course mention air freight, but the primary business is our less container load today, while all the other verticals are significantly, it's going to be a significant part of our business, but also it is significantly growing for percentage point of view, growing more than our less container load products today. So it's a very, very positive development that we are sort of pulling all the other products along and having them grow so customers really could go in as a one-stop shop. Our customer base for Shipco Transport is, as I mentioned earlier as well, logistics companies, freight forwarders, and NVOCCs. We don't really cater to the manufacturers of products. That we leave up to the freight forwarders and NVOCCs, while we become that company in between, if you will, for the freight forwarders and NVOCCs to use for their less container load needs.
So let's go down to basics, okay? Just for most of us are not that savvy in logistics terms. So I'm an importer in, say, in the west coast of the US, and I'm manufacturing in China some, say, home appliances. Usually I would buy FOB from the factory in China. My logistics partners would tend to be what is called a freight forwarder, right? Not directly you guys. I would not reach out to Shipco. It would be, I'm not going to say any names, but let's assume an international freight forwarder who is your client.
Right.
So this freight forwarder would contact you. You would be in the same way that sometimes for FCL, full container load, the freight forwarder would be in touch with a shipping company, namely the actual people running the vessels, the boats. When they have LCL products, they would go through you. Did I understand correctly?
Yes, that's correct. And maybe just to detail the LCL concept a little bit further. I mean, an LCL shipment is basically when you don't have enough to fill a full container. So let's say you have 10 boxes of plastic knives that you wanted to send from A to B anywhere around the world, right? Then you wouldn't traditionally go in and then buy a full container to move that 10 boxes of plastic knives. You would go out and you use either LCL, go to a freight forwarder, as you're saying, as you've explained it before as well, Manolo, and then the freight forwarder would come to us, or you would maybe go via air freight. If it's an urgent shipment, then you would use air freight, which is also certainly a very viable option. Of course, if it's anything domestic, then you would go out and use a trucker. That's also why our verticals sort of fit well in together. So for that one-stop shopping.
Okay, and something that we cannot not talk about, of course, is these last years have been quite a mess in terms of logistics. And I know that shipping companies have made loads of profit because we've all seen the price hikes that happened in the last years, which, if I'm not wrong, are coming down now. That affect you too in terms of pricing? Your prices also skyrocketed in the pandemic and after, especially after, because the extreme demand for space and the low offer of places inside containers that happened with consolidation too?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we saw exactly the same price hikes from the carriers for our consolidations. Well, anywhere around the world we saw these price hikes. Of course, some went up more than others, but for sure we saw some extreme price hikes. And I mean, one contributing factor for sure was the carriers, as you mentioned, right? Then you had the congestions, of course, the port congestions around the world during the pandemic. You had some work stoppage at the ports as well, certainly contributed to the congestions as well. Now you have the rail situation in the US in particular, where you see a potential rail stoppage that the rail system will be shut down. So the whole supply chain, for sure, it has been impacted severely around the world, in particular here in the US, which is a big consumer of goods. A lot of containers were stranded here. They could not get back out. So you ended up with much less equipment, much less containers available to load cargo in. So many times it was not necessarily because the vessels were full. There simply were not enough equipment to move business. So end of the day, the supply chain really got so severely congested, messed up, if you will. And the price hikes for sure.
It was, as you said, I didn't have so much in my head that it was such a, there were so many pain points, if you want. I had just the idea, too much demand, small supply. But we've all seen the pictures of vessels just outside of Long Beach in Los Angeles, sitting there for months. So it started building, the chaos kept multiplying almost exponentially now. But from what you're seeing in the last months, and we are taping this in November of 2022, the reality has been changing, at least pricing wise, of course, has gone down. But do you see that things are starting to get more fluid, or is it just a matter that we're going to live in this reality for the next, 5 years, a lot of uncertainty within the supply chain?
Right. Yeah, no, definitely. I think we are definitely on the right. We're on the right track to get back to some sort of normalcy, right? None of us have ever experienced what happened the last couple of years, and hopefully we'll not experience it again. I mean, we cannot rule that out, obviously, but you're right. The pricing has come down significantly. There's much more capacity on the carriers and on the steamship lines out there. So rates have naturally come down to a more normal. The capacity that's coming in now with new vessels also coming into the market, there's a lot of concern now that maybe that could put it even more pressure on the pricing, and in some cases maybe it's going to go below cost for the carriers, which obviously it's not what anybody wanted to see. We wanted to get some sort of normalcy and not these huge swings in pricing. Because you won't be able to depend on it for sort of longer period of time. It's very short-lived. But yeah, absolutely, things are getting better. We still have congestions in many places around the world. I mean, there are a lot of business, again, talking specifically about the US, so a lot of business being moved from the West Coast because of congestion there into the Gulf, into places like Houston. We also saw some going to Savannah over on the East Coast of the US, and now you have congestions in those places because they were not ready to take the extra business that was coming in. And that congestion is still sitting congestion there. There's still congestion down in LA. There's still congestion up in New York. So we're certainly not over that hump yet, but it is getting better.
That's important, Jakob. You touch something that I would like to understand a bit better. In such a moment of crisis, how did Shipco particularly adapt quick? I don't know, have you guys found out that flexibility and the ability to change origins and destinations has become a priority that's going to become part of the quote unquote DNA of the company? Like, how did you guys dealt with the crisis to survive it in a way and make sure that finally your clients were not heavily impacted?
Right. Our product teams that are very, very proud as being in sales and very happy, of course, that we were able to provide very quick solutions when we started to see the congestion happen. I mean, nobody predicted, of course, that it would end up like this, right? But when it did, our teams, our product teams, they were fantastic in making adjustments and starting to see, okay, if we're now facing these congestions in this place, what are the alternatives? We were also very, very good at speaking to our customers, of course, hey, what would they like to see? Would they like us to continue to sort of put cargo in and potentially avoid a congestion, or potentially sitting for a very long time? Or would you want to have a little bit of a longer transit time, but have a little bit more security that the container came out of the port? If, let's say, you moved from the West Coast to the East Coast, that the container then would come out quicker. And many, if not all, our customers, they say, hey, let's go to the East Coast. And we then changed our sailings, that we diverted a lot of cargo to the East Coast where it made sense. So our team was extremely quick and very, very proud to say that yeah, they did well. Our customers feel that we did well, all under the circumstances that we were in. I mean, nobody was happy with the situation, but
sure.
So
it's making the best out of the worst situation, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
I'm just curious, and Jakob, in terms of geographies, I'm going to assume most of your cargo is Asia, US. That's in terms of percentage of business of Shipco, does that represent by far the biggest movement of cargo?
Well, I think back in the day, you would definitely that was the case. But today we actually have when you look at it, intra-Asia, it's a huge market, it's the largest market in the world. We have had significant growth there. Certainly Asia westbound, so the Asia-Europe trade, for sure has grown significantly for us as well. So we are not just this trans-Pacific eastbound carrier that we really were maybe 15, 20 years ago that we were known for. It has significantly expanded for sure what we're doing today on really all trades. So it's a fairly equal mix, and nothing really stands out as being significantly larger than the other.
Okay, myself, having lived in Vietnam, I got the feeling of the growth of Southeast Asia. I'm wondering, in terms of volume, in your opinion, what is the geography that's becoming more relevant for you? Like, if you have to make a strategic decision where to put more headcount, more people, create more relations, maybe with agents, where is Shipco looking at right now?
I think we have significantly invested in Vietnam as well. It is similar to your point. That has been a huge growth area for us. There's no doubt more cargo or more manufacturing moving down towards South Asia still. That's moving away from China as we see it. I mean, if China obviously have had a lot of lockdowns and so on due to the pandemic, so we see more business for now in a way being channeled down towards the south. Is that going to continue like this? It's I think it's there to stay, but it's anybody's guess. So yeah, I can't tell you obviously for certain what's going to happen, but
sure.
But
don't worry. I know you don't have a magic ball, but it's clear that at least manufacturing, those terms, it's moving certain categories, moving out to the fast developing parts of South Asia, namely India, Bangladesh, Southeast Asia, Vietnam, etc. That's a trend that at least for now we can see.
Absolutely.
So to close, Jakob, in terms of the business side, before we go to the fun part of the questionnaire, I'm going to ask you just a an open question. How do you see the future of supply chain, and of course linked to logistics in terms of in the long term? If, in your opinion, what major trends are going to keep going in logistics?
I think one thing that we for sure have spent a significantly time and money on is sustainability. There's no doubt that sustainability is here to stay. Carriers have invested a lot of money in it, and time in it to lessen the CO2 footprint, right? So the CO2 footprint for sure has come up as a concern from many people. We are very concerned about it as well. Global climate, what we can contribute with in terms of global climate, it certainly weighs a lot on our heads, on our shoulders, and we need to do our part for sure. So sustainability, of course, plays a huge part of the supply chain that we have today, right? Are you using gas trucks at your CFS? Are you using solar powered trucks? Are you using forklifts and the warehouses themselves? Is that solar power, or is that electricity or gas that you're using in powering those, right? And there we have invested a lot in solar power. And a lot of other companies have as well. And I think the impact there it's going to be significant, because they're going to be people need to make the investments, and I think it's going to shape the logistics industry to be a little bit different than what it was in the past.
And you think your customers, are they valuing those efforts? Because potentially, hopefully in the long term, it will also help with your cost structure, but maybe now it might make your services a bit more expensive. Is it a variable for decision in your clients? Shipco is doing this, that has more connection to sustainability. These guys don't. I'll pay a little bit more for Shipco because I'm environmentally conscious. Is that happening?
Well, I think for price perspective, I don't think it's any more expensive than it was, or less expensive than it was before, right? I think the cost part of it, we've taken on some of these investments. Say, okay, hey, this is just something that we have to do. We don't necessarily pass it on, but there is absolutely a huge respect from customers as to what we do. The freight forwarders and VOCCs are also being pushed in that direction by their customers, by the manufacturers, that they want to see a lessened CO2 footprint, right? We go carbon neutral as a fancy word these days, right? So the cost is not necessarily being passed on, but I think we need to do what is right from the world, right? And we see for sure that the climate is out of control. So we have to do something, and we have to do something now. So, but people respect it, and it's only going to be much more on people's radar as we go along. No doubt.
I'm glad it's not. Sadly, a lot of companies are doing what's called just greenwashing, right? Just put something that you can promote it as almost as a benefit of your company, which is really not real. And you guys are doing it out of your own decision rather than being pulled by the market. So that's great. Sure. In the name of humanity, I say thank you. Okay, Mr. Jakob Bluhme, I want to run through you this fun questionnaire, which has before been answered by the likes of Al Pacino and Robert De Niro and I don't know, famous actors. It's a fun thing. So let's go for it. Okay, Jakob, What is your favorite word?
My favorite word for sure is integrity.
Jakob, what is your least favorite word?
Impossible.
What turns you on creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Challenges, really. It really turns me on spiritually and creatively. And dealing with serious people for sure is a huge part of also what really sort of turns me on. People that have the same kind of passion about logistics and LCL that I do. It certainly is. It's a necessity for me to be excited about something. So if people are willing to move mountains, then I'm willing to help them and get serious about it and get emotional about it. So yeah.
Sounds good. And what turns you off?
I think well, yeah, a lot of the opposites of what I just mentioned, right? People that are being defensive, people that sort of feel that things are not possible. So yeah, I mean, pretty much the opposite of what I mentioned. Somebody the unnecessary price hikes, you could say, in what we have been dealing with during the pandemic, because some people have been taking advantage of what's been happening out there, and that's certainly a turn off to me as well. I mean, yes, things increase, but let's also still keep it realistic, right?
Right. This is one of my favorite, and please, you can say whatever you feel like. Don't be shy about it. What is your favorite curse word?
My favorite curse word, you'll get that in Danish, is probably for helvede, mand.
Should I ask what does that mean?
Well, it means something like along the lines of for fuck's sake, or something like that.
Okay, we'll ask our audience to Google it. I think. Can you say that again? Say it one more time as you mean it, okay?
For helvede, mand.
Okay, that's great. Let's leave it at that one. What sound or noise do you love?
What I love is crickets.
Okay.
I mean, you could crickets is you can say there's a saying as well. Crickets means silence, right? But I actually very much enjoy the sound of crickets, which also means that, hey, there is sort of like this dead noise, which make it silence in a way. It sounds weird, but
no, it's good one. I like that one. And what sound or noise do you hate?
Leaf blowers.
Okay. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Yeah, it was a tough one to answer, really, because I really don't want to do anything else than what I do today. I want to deal with people. I want to deal with challenges. I want to continue to go out and travel the world and see people, see organizations, and yeah. So I really don't have a desire to do anything else today.
A drummer, a guitarist, a football player, nothing?
No, not really.
That's great.
No.
I envy you. Few people can actually say that. And Jacob, what profession would you never would like to do?
It's really a profession that would make me sit behind the desk. Any profession that would make me sit sort of bound to my table and having to sit and do emails and just make phone calls over the phone and not get out and engage with people and engage with the world. But that is definitely what I would not like to do.
Okay, and to close, and let me thank you so much, Jacob, for your time. It's been very insightful. So from our audience, I thank you very much for your time. Let's close with a philosophical question. If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Well, first, I would hope he would say welcome and wouldn't deny me entry, obviously. So, but tell me welcome and say, hey, Jacob, you have lived with integrity.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Jacob. Really, it's been great. Please, all the best to the family and to the audience out there. Thank you. Thank you to Belia Trading, of course, for creating the Tradecast. I say goodbye for now from Latin America, wishing you a successful day. Goodbye.
Thank you, Manolo.